So good morning. I'm absolutely delighted to be here. Then, of course, an Irish person is delighted to be anywhere where there's a bit of sunshine. Right. So in relation to Dell, and thanks, Matt, for the introduction, as you can imagine, as an organization with 108,000 employees globally, it's always interesting to see how do you get a customer-centric culture and understanding that ultimately either you are directly engaged with a customer or you are supporting somebody who is directly engaged with a customer. And throughout Dell's history, we've been known mostly as a product company. And when Dell came out first, it genuinely revolutionized the IT business because it focused on the total cost of ownership. It focused on engaging directly with customers. And we've never lost that approach throughout our business. However, the world has moved on. And in terms of Dell itself, for the first 24 years of our existence, we focused on building up that product portfolio. And we also focused on one single purpose or goal, which was to be the #1 PC supplier. And we got there. And I was interested in one of the talks earlier this week about you must have a purpose. And that was Dell's purpose. And there was a great, unanimous approach across the board to deliver that experience. And that's what we did. However, when we achieved it, we took our eye off the ball. And suddenly there wasn't a purpose. And we fumbled around for about 2 or 3 years. And within the organization, you could see that kind of loss of identity occurring. So it required the company to go back and look at what is our purpose now? And we developed that new purpose, and we started to work towards it. And that purpose was to move from being that product provider to being a solutions provider, looking across the board at our entire organization. One of the first things we identified was to be a solutions provider, what capabilities did we have? And we discovered very quickly that we were able to service no more than 25% of the market in terms of capability. So the company now had to transform and start bringing some of that IP and some of that capability in. So it moved from an organization that had about 60,000 people, and our only experience of acquisitions, bringing new companies in those first 24 years, were 4 small companies. And I can honestly say our approach to those acquisitions was a complete disaster. And it went terribly wrong. In the last 4 years, we have brought in 21 additional companies into Dell. And I'm pleased to say we've been a lot more successful because one of the things we did was we kept those companies as their own entities so that what attracted us to them in the first place remained that way. And then we used the Dell model to actually increase their ability to reach out and find a much wider customer base. So we're going through that transformation. And one of the things that we found was, as a company and as a public entity, we discovered that our shareholders did not have the same interest in the pace we wanted to run this transformation. So as a result, you may be aware that a number of months ago, Michael Dell bought the company back. So imagine we now view ourselves as one of the largest startup companies ever, right? So that is introducing its own challenges. What it also does, and I know there's a lot of conversation around customer experience and how important it is, but one of the pieces that Dell also now has is Michael Dell didn't buy the company on his own. You needed to finance it. So that brings additional dynamics into that kind of transformation. So a lot of what I'm going to talk through here today, I just wanted to set that frame and give you a sense of what journey Dell is on, what it's been doing, and how do you take that type of environment, that culture or DNA that Dell had, and move it from that product company to this solutions provider and still not lose touch in customer experience, okay? So a lot of it is going to be focused on how we measure that customer success, but also how we transform internally as we go through this process. Okay? So these are just a few little snippets. Founded in 1984 by Michael Dell. In addition to that, we've got 95% of Fortune 500 customers that do business with Dell. But also, across those 180 countries, as you can imagine, there is a tremendous amount of Dell direct employees, partners, and also distributors, retailers, but never losing sight of customer first. And I mentioned about our purpose. So in terms of the purpose itself, it's around delivering technology solutions that enable people everywhere to grow and thrive. Now imagine trying to translate that across those 180 countries. The word thrive alone, what does it mean to you? From a customer experience perspective, what does the word thrive mean? And for us, it's something very simple. How do I help you to grow? So instead of, and this is one of the things that we've communicated to our sales teams, stop going into customers, selling them products and pushing products to them. The very first question that you should always ask is, what problem are you trying to solve? And how can we help? And as a result, it now means that Dell will go into customers. And if the customer wants to use Dell products, then that's fine. If the customer doesn't want to use Dell products, that's fine too. And we will work with whichever vendor that you want to work with. That was a major mind shift change. But it also helps us to bring that information back to our product groups and to our various partners and acquisition companies. What is it that you're not offering or you're not providing that have our customers wanting to do with other vendors? So it's a complete mindset change. So when you talk about customer experience, and we often talk, and I know yesterday there was a conversation about, you know, it can be sometimes very fluffy, and what's the real driver behind it? Well, the approach that we've taken in Dell is every year we have annual performance bonuses and things. So I can tell you that Michael Dell is fully behind customer experience. So are the executive leadership team. So much so that our bonus is dependent on our Net Promoter Score. So if we don't achieve our targets in Net Promoter Score, there is no bonus. That's 108,000 employees. If that's not motivation, I'm not sure what isn't, right? So when we go through it, you know, one of the things that we focus on, and I'm sure all of you are familiar with Net Promoter Score itself, from a survey design perspective, like any service, the danger is always that you can take that survey and you can shape the questions to get the information that you want. But that doesn't necessarily bring value or insight to your organizations. It's really important that you actually go back to your customers and you get their input on what those questions should be. And that allows you then to really be customer-centric. And we use multiple different listening posts to help us to achieve that. So just to kind of put it into perspective, we have multiple customer events across the world. We invite not just the CIOs and the CEOs and so on, but we'll also bring in other decision makers and other users, because we're really, I suppose, interested in their opinions, but also leveraging their ideas in terms of how we move forward. And to that effect, we also introduced a concept called Idea Storm. And that allowed customers to come online and give us an indication of what they wanted, what they would like to see in our products, what they'd like to see in our service offerings. And we got something like 8,500 responses within the first 4 weeks. And what you do in that situation, because there can be huge diversity in terms of what people are offering to you. So the approach we took was, let's identify what the top 50 are. We'll go back out to that same audience of 8,500 people and get them to prioritize those 50. And then we started to introduce them into our designs and continue to get their feedback. We do our surveys. We have our online forums. We also have customer visits. And here's a question for you, because we're all customer experience focused and we try to be customer centric. So ask yourself this one question, and I'm not going to ask for a show of hands or anything. When was the last time you actually went and visited a customer and actually spoke to them and got their input directly? Not from your teams, not from dashboards, not from reports compiled from anybody else, but you personally went and spoke to a customer or picked up the phone and spoke to a customer. And I was fascinated when I first joined Dell that very few of our executives and very few of our teams did. Right? They would meet them at events and so on, and normally in those situations they were selling something or they were marketing something. But to actually just sit there and try and put yourself in the shoes of the customer to understand exactly what they're doing. Right? So it's always an interesting piece. Social media, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that a little bit later, because one of the interesting learnings for Dell was that in the past, when you're dealing with a customer, it's normally a one-on-one. I mentioned at the start, Dell was firmly rooted in dealing directly with customers. It's a one-on-one conversation. It's a private conversation. When you're having that in social media, you've got a completely different challenge. And if you wanted to take it as an analogy, view it as you're on a talk show. You're having a one-to-one interview with the person on the stage. But there are millions of people watching. And that's the interesting challenge with social media. Because if you are slow to respond, if somebody raises an issue and you do not respond, their followers will crucify you and will do significant damage to your brand. So it means you really need to be conscious of it. So 2 things we did. First off, we had that challenge with you've got a traditional kind of call center or customer engagement model. How do you ensure that you are going to be able to engage with customers in the channel that they will choose? And remember, you will never get to choose. The customer will always decide which channel they want to go with. So we took our traditional call center and sales engagement teams and we developed our own social media certification program and trained employees to be able to interact in the traditional role or utilizing social media. And it gave them the ability to engage with customers 24/7, anywhere in the world. To date, we have 15,000 employees who've been certified through this internal program. It consists of about 3 base models, and then they can decide which mode they want to go with, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Google+, and so on. And they get trained and certified to use it. And the feedback from our teams have been absolutely tremendous on it. But then the other piece of it that we never forget is you need to talk to your employees. They're the ones who are talking to customers every day. They know exactly the pain that those customers are going through, and they can provide you fantastic insights without having to go off and spend a fortune on getting somebody else to come in and tell you, because they're going to go talk to those employees anyway, right? So why don't you do it first? So as we've gone through our customer loyalty and net promoter score journey, one of the things we used to do was we would every quarter go out and target 25% of our customers. So at least once a year, a customer would be engaged on customer loyalty. We would then go and take that information, take the feedback, take the verbatims, develop action plans. But guess what would happen? As soon as we did that, the next set of survey results would come in. And it might offer different insights or different information. And it became very higgledy-piggledy in terms of what we were doing. So we stopped doing it every quarter. And we decided instead we'll do it twice a year. And in between then, we'll do a pulse of the business. So we will go out and we will approach all of the various groups that you see there, whether that's our care team, we'd garner our product experience, we would go through our social media piece, and we would listen to sales and agents themselves. So that gave us a sense of the pulse of the business and where we needed to focus. And then when the NPS survey came in, it would either validate that pulse or it would allow us to have the time to drive the right business forward. So what did it all mean? I'm going to just share with you some of the insights that we've gleaned over the last number of years as we go through our customer journey. So I've picked 4 different categories here just to put it into perspective for you. We've looked at our products, our price, the account relationship between the sales teams and the customer, and our support. And this is some of the information we found, right? So if you look at our products, our promoters were 3 times more likely, either through social media or through traditional channels, to provide compliments to Dell. Whereas our detractors were twice as likely to actually nail us to a cross, right? And as you move through into price and you move into account relationship and support, you see those same type of figures, right? So even from a price perspective, promoters, 5 times more likely. Detractors, twice as likely to criticize you on it, okay? So those are just kind of some of the stats that you can see. Account relationship, knowing the business that your customer is in, being able to have a conversation with them that is less about you trying to push something to them and more about trying to solve the problem that they have, right? 6 times more likely to praise you on social media or through any channel, okay? And I'll give you a prime example. We had the CEO from NASA who spoke to us there about a year ago. And fascinating story, we were asking her, tell us about your experience with Dell over the last number of years, and have you witnessed a change in dealing with Dell? And she said, absolutely I have. For the last number of years, I would get a sales guy coming into me trying to sell me servers because he thought that's what I needed. And she said, one day I had to turn around and tell him straight, I have 6,500 servers inside my data centers. I don't need any more servers, right? But the next time he came in, he asked her, what problem are you trying to solve? And she started to look ahead, and she was thinking about how do I future-proof the business? And it opened up a whole completely different conversation, new opportunities, and new ways of engaging with that customer, so that now the experience that we're getting with Dell was as a partner, not as a vendor. And there's a very subtle but important difference between the two. Okay? So, moving on from that, we have kind of the whole notion of dissatisfaction and delight. And again, using the analysis, we examined and we went back and spoke to our customers. So those who had originally maybe scored us as promoters and had now moved to passive, right? Or those that were promoters and became detractors, right? And we were interested to understand the areas that you're dissatisfied in. How significant is that in contributing? And you can just see even from the information I'm providing that for promoters who became passive, it wasn't that the number of issues that they might have occurred were a huge problem. It was more that they weren't delighted anymore, right? So they didn't see a differentiator between you and any of your competitors. And remember now in the digital age, your competitors are just one click away, right? And by that I just mean that every one of us can go onto Google, we can go onto Yahoo, we can go onto whatever social media site we want and type in the words competitors of your company, press the button, and every one of your competitors will come up, right? So one click away. So it was the lack of delight. When you look at promoters becoming detractors, it was multiple bad experience. It wasn't that something went wrong. Never forget, and we all know that from a customer experience perspective, it is not necessarily the fact that something happened. It's how you deal with it and how you deal with the customer. And we were having that conversation just this morning. You know, if somebody tells me that they have a problem with their Dell hardware, while that would be a concern to me if I saw a pattern of it, I'm more concerned with how we treated you as a customer. Were we there for you? Did we understand the implication to you and your business? Whether you're a consumer, whether you're a large commercial global entity, it doesn't matter. And the other lesson that we learned as well is do not differentiate consumers and commercial customers all that much, right? Where you can integrate the experience. Why? Because the person who is making the decision tomorrow on doing business with you at a commercial level could very well be the father or the mother of a child who has been on the phone for 3 hours with Dell the night before, going through hell and being passed around, right? So it's really important that you have that same level of high standard of customer experience, no matter who is dealing with you, right? So it's a really critical point. Also, be very careful with your surveys. As I mentioned earlier, you can tailor questions any way you want, right? But also, be conscious of customers' time and input, right? You want to get insights from them. You want them to help drive your business and their business forward. The minute you go onto a survey, and we've all done it, right? And I guarantee you, when we leave this hotel, within 24 hours, we'll all get a link for a survey. And you will typically respond to that survey if you had a great experience or if you've had a terrible experience. But if you go onto the survey and you suddenly discover, you know, where it tells you you're 5% complete, 10% complete, right? If you've answered 3 or 4 questions and you haven't hit that 20 or 30% complete, you're going to stop and walk away, right? So don't go into situations where you are creating effort and work by a customer, because you're not going to get the insights. And what you'll find is, as the survey goes on, even if they stay to the end, you're starting to see they're either getting tired or you're starting to frustrate them to the point that they're no longer clear what they're answering anymore. And if you're repeating questions, or if they feel, hey, I answered that already, why are you asking me again? That can be hugely frustrating and misleading then when you're analyzing the information. So, taking all of that into account, what are the types of programs that we have put in as a result of that? And I just wanted to share a few of them with you. One is customer outreach, activating promoters, helping a customer, and then talk a little bit about how we leverage social media as part of that process. So from a customer outreach perspective, you know, as you can imagine, we're very keen on sales engaging with customers all the time, and we do what we call tank, engage, and share. So if you fill in a survey for Dell, you will get a phone call back, unless you've specifically listed that do not contact me under any circumstances. And we do give you that option. But if you do not select that option, we will come back to you. Because number one, we appreciate the fact that you actually took the time to complete the survey. So that's the first step that we take. We will also engage them to understand more if there are things that were particularly positive, and we'll also engage to understand if there were things that might have been negative, so that we are addressing each of those different categories as we go through. Simultaneously then, we leverage all of our different CRM systems. We take that information and we couple it back into sales as well. And then all of that drives improvement that goes back to the customer. And as we go through that tank, engage, and share, we're getting their feedback on some of those changes that we've implemented, right? So in terms of that winning post-survey conversations, you know, you can see there the hashtags. These are used by sales so that when they have that conversation, they select those hashtags, and that gives them direct and immediate access to all of the different support groups that are throughout the business. And then we give those guys a 2-week window to come back to that salesperson with whatever improvement programs or whatever changes they've adapted based on that customer's observations. And then that salesperson follows up with the customer again 2 weeks later with a follow-up call addressing any issues. And in the case of where they've given very positive feedback, we reinforce that message to them that we're going to maintain and keep that in place. So all of that helps to drive that process forward. We activate promoters by getting our senior executives across the business to personally call. We give them a list of customers that we want them to call. So as they go through that process, and I should point this out, we will call our promoters and we will call our detractors. So the sales teams that I mentioned earlier will call detractors, executives will call promoters. And that is in every single country, that's the approach we take. We also, by nature of our customers telling us that sometimes it can be very difficult to deal with Dell. And I'm sure you've all experienced this, not just with Dell, but with other companies, where you ring through to somebody, you explain your life story to them, and then at the end of it, they tell you, well, actually, I can't help you with this one. let me pass you on to, and now you're back to telling your life story again. And you could have 3 or 4 of these conversations. By the time you're finished, you've actually forgotten what the issue is, and now you're just pissed with them for the way they actually dealt with you, right? So it's about how do you make it simple? And we introduced this concept called help a customer. And it's both an external and internal activity. And each of our employees actually have a card. And it's that simple. You get online, you select the region, you tell us your issue, and that goes into one centralized team, and they will do all of that engagement internally, right? So it's, for a customer, it's one activity. And then somebody will call you back, but it'll be the right person. It'll be the person that can actually address your issue and get it resolved quickly. So feedback from that, from our customers, has been quite significant. We also try to drive wow moments. Let me just share a story with you, and I know Tim had mentioned about storytelling, but to me this was a perfect example of where you get your employees fully engaged in this process. I'm not sure if anyone here is a huge fan of Formula One, but there, about a year ago in Madrid, the Williams team had a fire in one of their garages during the Madrid race. And one of our tech support employees, who's a huge, huge fan, was sitting at home on a Sunday watching this race going on. And then, of course, the news came on about this fire going on. And he thought about it, and he recognized, hey, they're one of our customers. So he rang his boss, and he said, listen, you probably haven't seen the news, but Williams have a problem. And they've got another race in 3 weeks' time. We've got to help them, right? So he and his boss rang a few other guys from within Dell. They created a war room situation. They got in. They identified what equipment had been destroyed. They went ahead and organized to get all of that equipment replaced and to have it delivered to the next race event in 3 weeks' time. And as a result, Williams were able to just continue as is without having to worry about the damage, right? Now, the normal process there is Williams would have to come back to us, they'd go through the whole thing. But here was somebody using their initiative, understanding this is a customer, I need to help that customer. And I just think it's a great example of people understanding that as a customer experience champion, you don't switch off when you leave the office building. And I remind my own employees as well the same thing. Don't forget that the biggest example of customer experience and what great customer experience is within yourself. Because we're all consumers. You know what good looks like. You know what great looks like. Suddenly we get a mind lapse as soon as we walk through the door of our building. And we forget, and we're looking for input and insight from everybody else. Never forget your own experiences and live them every single day. And that's what we encourage our employees. And I think just that story with the Formula One thing gives you an example of it. So look for those wow moments. Share them across your teams. Let people understand so that they can recognize it as well. And it encourages and fosters a lot of innovative and creative thinking in that format. And give your employees the opportunity to exercise it. Social media, we know it's huge. It's extremely challenging across the board. I mentioned already what we do as part of the process. We also have a command center. And this command center, it's based in Ashton. It operates 24/7. And what it actually does is we are testing and analyzing every social media channel that is out there. And as we go through it, we're watching for sentiment. We're watching for not just ourselves, but our competitors. So we can get a sense of how is the industry being perceived, how are all of us being perceived, and what are customers looking for us to do differently. And we generate reports, we generate changes within our organization to address these. So we incorporate that into our CRM system, and we've got this continuous feedback process going on. And I suppose one of kind of the last pieces of data that I'm going to share with you, two things. I mentioned about employee engagement. your employees are your most single valuable resource when it comes to customer engagement. And one of the things that we found was employees themselves, they also have that voice. And I know there was a discussion during Michael's presentation yesterday about that, employee engagement and around doing surveys with employees. We do that as well, right? And I absolutely agree with him. I seriously question often the value and what feedback I'm getting on those surveys. One of the things that we've done in Dell, which I think is a problem, and we still haven't corrected it, is we do these surveys and we use it as a measure of how effective the manager is. So what happens in that situation? The manager goes, talks to his team, and says, hey, look, this survey is testing me. You need to treat me fairly, right? So you're completely undermining the purpose of it, right? And it's asking some very genuine questions around the culture, and it's asking genuine questions, but because it's a reflection of the manager, the information being fed into it is false. However, the real interesting piece is the comments. And I mentioned this to some folks I was talking to yesterday. I can remember back in the 16 years I've been with Dell, the first 5 or 6 years were directly in manufacturing. We had a very large manufacturing plant with about 5,000 employees in Ireland. And I remember reading through the comments, because the survey results would always be positive, right? But one of the questions we would ask was, what is the one thing you like most about Dell? And one of the responses back was, I love looking at it in my rearview mirror as I drive away, right? Now, having said that, that person scored positively in the survey, right? So the real richness was actually in the commentary. That kind of gave you a better perception of what was going on. So what we did was we introduced 2 questions into the survey, and we used that Net Promoter Score approach. And one of the first questions we asked were, would you recommend Dell to a friend or colleague as a great place to work? And would you recommend Dell's product and services to a friend or colleague? And I'll tell you, the results were fascinating. Just even watching the variation between the different functions and departments. And we got more insight and more value out of those 2 questions than the 37 questions that were aimed at the manager, right? So when you're looking at your surveys, particularly with employee engagement, and as I said, I would agree with Michael, you can question to death, right? But if you really want that true richness, I've always found personally, sit in a room with folks, talk to them, or go to them on a daily basis and get them to give you that feedback. And if they're not willing to give you that feedback, then that in itself tells you loads about the environment you've created in terms of your management style, right? But if they're willing to open up to you, it's really important that just like customers, you keep going back to them and you update them on what is changing based on their feedback and based on your personal behaviors and so on, right? So that's really, really important. But the reason I mention that is what we found when we've done that analysis over the last number of years, employees that felt really engaged, really supported by their managers, and by measure of the process, we discovered that their customer Net Promoter Score was twice the score of any of our employees that scored poorly in that employee engagement survey. Twice, right? And the reason I mention that to you by way of introduction to this piece is when we did a baseline study over the last number of years on our customers and our customer Net Promoter Score, we found that 25% more revenue was spent by our promoters than by our passives or our detractors. That's 25% more. So if your employees drive twice the level of customer Net Promoter Score, and those customers instead spend 25% more revenue, there's your return on investment. That is why that employee engagement is so critical as part and parcel of the customer experience piece. So I wanted to just finish with this one quote, and it's from a lady called Maya Angelou. And I use that quote all of the time myself, and because it resonates so well with me. And it resonates with me as being, somebody who is a consumer and a customer in my own right. And I leverage it when I'm dealing with customers all of the time. And I don't care, because I'm a global, my remit is global, I will engage with customers through any social media, any time of the day or night. Obviously, there's a couple of hours that I'd like to get some sleep in, but I will engage with them because they're so important to our business, right? But this is what I remember every time, right? It's people will not remember what you did or what you said, but they will always remember how they made you feel, right? If you can think of that and bring that one message back, that is what will drive your business forward and give you the opportunity to grow, okay? So that's pretty much what I wanted to cover with you this morning. I am available for the rest of the day until we finish. You can contact me on LinkedIn, you can contact me on Facebook, but if you've got any additional questions or queries, please come talk to me at any stage, either here or afterwards. I will share, I will work with you, whatever we are. And if you are a Dell customer, never be afraid to reach out. We're there for you. Okay? That's it.